So we are getting a new skill, and that skill is sailing. So this is the sailing poll results summary, and it's actually pretty crazy that 161,000 players took part in the vote here, which that's a lot, right? And then they talk about why it wasn't polled separately and what's next for sailing, and they're aiming to release it in late 2024, so it's still a very, very long time to wait, obviously, for it. And there's going to be, they want to make it crisp and perfect because it's going to be the biggest probably update that old school RuneScape has ever had, especially if they do like an underwater or some type of raid at the sea, right? That just would be the biggest update ever, and they want to make it like obviously perfect and crisp. So this is just some of the poll results, right? So votes by the skill level, so it's kind of cool to see that. So most people who voted were actually like over 1,500 total, which is cool. And you can see like the green is the yes and this is the no. So the higher level community did definitely vote no the most. I thought this one was very, very cool too. So non-Ironman versus Ironman, and it looks like this might be a very similar type of chart, but as an Ironman, I think you would definitely want this to come into the game, right? Ironman made up 30% of the total votes. This is also a very interesting statistic. Looking all the way back to the new skill poll from December, we're delighted to see that out of all the players who voted no to a new skill, 26% of them changed their minds and voted yes to sailing. So we're getting it. It's coming into the game. Now, a lot of people are going to say this is no longer old school RuneScape, but ever since they added the very first update to the game, it wasn't. I think it was like something like the Nightmare Zone, right? It was one of the very first updates that they added to the game to make combat more AFKable, whatever it might be. And then they added God Wars, which was from before the original RuneScape, right? And then they added brand new things, and they've added Karen, and they've added so many new bosses. Think about it. Old school RuneScape never had, like, if you were talking old school RuneScape, there was no Zalra, there was no Vorkath, there was no raids. Raids weren't a thing. We didn't have Karen. There's so many things that they've added to this game, like Fossil Island, like that were never actually in the original RuneScape. Every good update that I can actually think of off the top of my head has just been added to old school RuneScape, right? So, you know, rune crafting was very, very slow. They fixed this, and then they added the blood rune crafting and the soul rune crafting, and eventually they added the Guardians of the Rift, right? Construction, very boring and repetitive. They added mahogany homes for contracts, right? Mining, you know, they added the motherlode mine, agility, they added rooftop agility, all of these awesome, amazing updates, even things with skilling, right? The farming guild, they added into old school RuneScape, so it's no longer old school RuneScape, so that argument doesn't even make sense. Without updates, the game simply wouldn't grow. Now, I don't agree with all the updates, I'm not saying that, but it needs to have updates, new types of content, or players will get bored and simply play another game. Now, another argument I heard a lot of people talking about is, does it need to be a skill? Could it be a minigame? Now, this is something I kind of agree on. I think it could be a minigame, and they're relating it to, say, dungeoneering, right? I honestly always consider dungeoneering a minigame, not a skill. So I definitely see the point of people saying that sailing could just be a minigame, right? And, you know, you go through this minigame, right? But I think the whole scaling aspect of it, it makes more sense that it's a skill, right? Because then you unlock this at X level, you get this at this level, you need to do this quest, right? If it's a minigame, it's kind of hard to like scale that properly. But I see people's point where it could be a minigame. We can go to tons of different islands right now without sailing, right? We got teleporting, right? There's so many different ways to get across the map. So why do we need sailing? I don't think it's as much as going to be used for transportation, right? I think it's going to be used to explore and find new areas. I think people are confusing it, thinking that it's going to replace teleporting or something. It's going to be used to explore and find brand new areas and discover that and get these new quests and whatever it might be. I think out of all the three options, taming, shamanism, and then sailing, I think by far sailing has the most potential for the game to grow, right? There's just unlimited things they could add to the game with sailing. If you really think about it, with sailing, they could add a million different new areas and cities. They could add brand new Slayer Masters and Slayer creatures, new quests, and each of the new towns could have their own separate achievement diary, right? New collection log items. We got new skilling methods. You could do new trees or ores or whatever, you know what I mean? And then maybe in the far future, they could expand skills to go to 120, and maybe just certain skills like Slayer, they could make go to 120, and they have brand new creatures on these islands that are harder to kill, whatever it might be. There's going to be new bosses that they could add with sailing, even some water or underwater bosses, and also they could make plenty of new raids, right? It's cool that they added like a raid in the desert. They've got a raid in Mauritania. They could even add a raid to Lumbridge, right? But eventually they're going to run out of cities, so with sailing they could expand, make more cities, and have unlimited raids, because that's the type of content that people like. Another thing I thought is that you could build your own island. You know how like in your house, you can kind of customize your house and do all this. I'm not trying to relate this to The Sims or anything, but I think it would be really cool if you could build your own island and maybe somehow have your POH be on that island. I don't know. I think it would be very cool. So overall, am I excited for the sailing skill? Yes, and I'm not trying to worry about it or think about it too much right now. They said it would be late 2024, so we're looking a year plus from now, and we're going to be able to see the development the entire time, and we get to vote on yes or no to these certain things, and I think the skill is going to come out very smooth and very perfect. I have very high hopes and faith in Jagex. It will be very good for the game's growth and the health of the game. No matter what skill it was, they needed to have a skill that would make a huge impression and by far be the biggest update that has ever come to the game, right? And there's been some pretty big updates, right? We got like all the raids have been just massive updates, massive quests like Dragon Slayer 2, or I guess even now Desert Treasure 2. They have to make this update perfect, right? And if they don't, if they rush it or whatever, right, it's not going to end up being perfect. And I think they could, like I was talking about, like have bosses at release date or whatever it might be, right? And of course in the future they could expand on this and maybe implement like a raid or an underwater activity or something. The most important thing is the overall like health of the game, right? If the players are going up and up and up slowly, the game's gonna last a lot longer. And you know, if the players are dropping, it's not gonna do that so much. And we don't want them to ever add something like microtransactions. You know, I heard Jagex is actually being sold, and I would never want them to add something like microtransactions into old school RuneScape, because that would kill the game, like right off. It would kill the game. That's one of the biggest problems with RuneScape 3 anyways, is the microtransactions, and I would never want something like that to happen, right? So we got to keep like a nice active player base so that just the memberships and the bonds and whatever it might be can cover as much as possible, right? And I hate to admit this, but without RuneScape 3, I don't think old school RuneScape would be possible, right? Because RuneScape 3 makes so much money off of all the microtransactions. So it's okay, they can have fun with that game, and we can have our nice little perfect game where we don't have microtransactions. RuneScape is in a very good place right now. So many good updates are happening, right? And even with both games, like they're both actually growing right now, which is crazy. The other day there was a screenshot that somebody took, and I think it was like 180,000 players were on at the same time, which that's like back to the glory days. I remember there was like 210,000 people online back when I was a kid, and I was just shocked by that. And then I would slowly see old school, and I guess combined with RuneScape 3 we'd have 100,000, but now at one point we had 180,000. I can't imagine what sailing will do to the game, right? I know it will make some players mad, and maybe some players will quit because of it, but I think it has a far better potential and growth for the game. I'm also really excited to see the race for 99 again. It's been a very long time since we've seen something like that, where everyone, I think at the very start of sailing, there'll be so many people logged in trying to go for that XP and go for that rank and see the first person to get 99, the first person to get 200 mil XP. It's going to be so cool, and I just can't wait for it. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Let me know down in the comments if you want sailing in the game, if you voted yes, if you voted no, if you think it's good for the game, or if you think it's gonna kill the game. Anyways, thank you guys, and I will catch you in the next video. See ya later.